so appreciated the last couple of days of listening to all these stories. It's amazing to me just all the things that God does with all of us. Also different, also purposeful, also important. One thing that's easiest for us is with Homes of Living Hope. I have a short little 1-minute video. It kind of explains what we do with the containers, and definitely a much quicker way to learn about that if you want to go ahead and show it.
The goal of Homes of Living Hope has always been to bring people together and work on a project to help somebody else. While we're focused on helping people in other parts of the world, we get the value of working together here as a group. Homes of Living Hope provides the framework for the individual projects as volunteers and organizations join forces to transform shipping containers into much-needed structure. We take a standard shipping container 40 feet long, 8 feet high, and 8 feet wide, which offers a versatile, robust structure perfect for creating a range of different facilities, such as schools, medical clinics, community centers, and more. Once the shipping container conversion is complete, we fill it with donated goods, put a lock on the door, and deliver the container to a partner organization. We strive to build lasting connections, both in our own communities and with those we send them to around the world. Connecting communities through service, that's our passion.
So that's what Homes of Living Hope does, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we got to that place. But I thought I would start a little bit with just my story. As Paul had shared, I was an industrial construction company. I ran an industrial construction company. We worked all over the United States, around the world, building primarily in the power industry. And I loved my job. I was a can-do guy. I loved tough scheduling. I loved figuring things out. I was a builder. And through my faith walk, as I matured, I started looking for how it was I could apply that skill set, maybe in more of a faith way. And I would be on building committees with churches, and I worked on some international projects, building some things around in different places in the world. And I had a good friend of mine that I had grown up with, and he was the pastor of a small church in the metro area of Denver there. And we went to lunch, and he told me, he had just come back from Liberia, and he said, hey, look, we need to figure out how to build an orphanage in Liberia. Well, I'm a contractor, so I'm like all over this. We can figure this out. And he said, well, the problem is there's a lot of war over there. There's not a lot of infrastructure, and it just wouldn't be safe to send people over there. If there was a way that we could minimize the amount of time that we would spend in the country. And so I thought, well, we use these shipping containers in my business. We convert them to offices and fab shops and tool rooms, things like that. We fit them out in our yard. We drop them in. They quickly get set up. And what if we did that with this orphanage? What if we build one out to be a bunkhouse? We build one out to be a kitchen. We built one out to be a restroom. And we could send it over, and it would quickly be set up. Well, that project never happened because we couldn't connect with somebody on the other end to make sure it happened. But Scott said, what if we set up as a nonprofit, and when God's ready to do something with it, we'll be ready. And so that's what we did. And that was around 2005. And so I would tell this story to people, to friends, and it was kind of one of those cool things to talk about at a party, that kind of thing. And so around, I think it was 2007, 2008, another good friend of mine ran a large church up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and they were involved with a ministry in Uganda. And he said, hey, look, we want to do a medical clinic. Could you help us do that out of one of your containers? And I thought, well, but now I have a project. And so I dove into the thing and started figuring it all out. But in the process, we started seeing that this was way more than a construction project. People, while there had been 30, 40 people that had gone from this church over to Uganda and served, there were hundreds of people that wanted to be part of this project. And they would go out and into the community of Cheyenne, and they would tell the story of their church, and they would tell the story of what they were doing over in Uganda. And they would give medical supplies, medical equipment, construction materials, things like that to build up this container. So we built that container, we sent it over to Uganda, and it was a huge success. I tell people all the time, no matter how it comes together on this end, when it goes to the other end, God gets all the credit for it. They all are like, look, we've been praying that God wouldn't forget us, and these people that we don't even know have done this for us. So about this time, while all this is going on, I'm starting to feel pretty restless in my career. I'm starting to feel, I told people at the time I felt like God was repositioning me somehow. And I had been given the Halftime book 5-10 years in advance. I read it, I threw it behind my desk and said, this has nothing to do with me. And but I pulled that book back out and I read it again. And so I've talked to Jeff Spatafore. I'm not sure how I connected with him, but somehow I found him. And so Jeff started coaching me, and Halftime was a little bit different back then, but he started coaching me one-on-one for a couple of years, and really helping me sort through a lot of things that were happening in my heart that God was doing. Well, as we had finished this one container, a high school in New Jersey found us online, and their shop teacher calls me on a Saturday morning, and he says, hey, I was looking for a project for a bunch of students to build that has more meaning to it. We build these things and we tear it apart each year. And could you help us build out one of these containers? And he said, we could care less where it goes. I could care less. And I'm like, I know a perfect place for it to go. So I said, how about a medical clinic in northern Uganda, just short of South Sudan, that'll serve the South Sudanese people? Well, they were, is this a religious thing? This was a public high school in a pretty liberal area in New Jersey. And they said, are you affiliated with the church? I told them, no, we're a faith-based organization, but we're not affiliated with the church. And they said, well, will the clinic serve everybody? I said, absolutely. So they said, all right, we'll do it. And so now we have this public high school in a liberal area of New Jersey building a medical clinic for a group called New Covenant Christian Center in northern Uganda. So they go, as we get involved with them, they say, I tell them, what if we got the art class involved in this thing to design the artwork for the outside, and you know, have you considered maybe getting the business class involved to put together promotional materials? And they really embraced the idea, and so the whole school got behind building this container. Well, by the end of the school year, it was completely finished out. It was filled with medical equipment, supplies, humanitarian aid, and we shipped it off to South Sudan. And again, it was, God got all the credit for it. And what really struck me and struck our board was that we had brought all these resources from outside the kingdom into the kingdom work. And so when we had originally started, our idea was, our mission was basically that we would build facilities for third world ministries. And we started saying, no, this is way bigger than this. We're connecting communities. We're bringing all these resources into play into the kingdom work. And so that's where we started to go with the whole thing. Well, as I said, I was working with Jeff, and you were talking about the silent prayer, or the silent retreats yesterday, and that was a big thing that Jeff had me doing. I was doing them for about a year or so, and in this, I kept feeling like God, I was really being led to leave Casey Industrial, and at one point in time, I would sit and I would say, hey, God, just show me what you want me to do, and I'll do it, and I'll leave. And at one of my silent retreats, it was kind of impressed upon me that, hey, look, I told you what I want you to do, and that's leave. And so I did. And I went to our board, I told them, look, I'm ready, the company's in a good place, my heart's in a good place. And so about a year later, on August 1st of 2011, I left Casey Industrial for the last time, and my heart was broken. I loved my company, I loved my job, I loved everything about it. But I really knew that was what God wanted me to do. And it was on a Thursday, was my last day, and I thought, well, I'm going to take a long weekend, and then God will have this grand plan for me on Monday, because I'm a very talented guy. And so Monday came, and there was no grand plan. And Tuesday, there was no grand plan. And 2 weeks, there was no grand plan. And 2 months, there was no grand plan. And I was comfortable with it. It was difficult, but I was comfortable because I really felt that I was doing what I was being told to do. And looking back, I see that I needed to learn to be quiet, and I needed to learn to not do for a little bit, and allow God to go before me. And about 8 months in, I was praying one morning about it, and I was like, God, just give me something to do. Give me, like, boil water, you know what I mean, or something. Give me something to do. And again, it was just kind of impressing me, like, I've given you something to do with Homes of Living Hope. And it just really struck me because, again, it was a fun thing to talk about at parties. It wasn't difficult from a construction point of view, and so I felt like it was underutilizing my talent. And so I thought, you know what, if this is important to God, it's important to me, and I'm going to do it like it matters. And so that was a big shift, and all this had kind of come together at the same time. And now we weren't about building, we were about connecting people. We were about trying to bring people together in a way that allowed God to work with them. And we weren't going to, and it wasn't, and I would just go out and I would and approach it that way. And so we, with the connecting communities, people ask me a lot of times, what that is all about. You know, like what's the motivation of the connecting, or how do you do it? And I tell people a lot the story of with Jesus when he was teaching to the multitudes, and the disciples came to him and they said, hey, we need to send all these people home, they're hungry. And so Jesus didn't say, stand back, I'm going to show you something awesome. He said, feed them. That's what his response was, is that you need to feed them. And so, this was a part that really struck me, was that the disciples didn't say, how are we ever going to do that? They just said, do you realize how much that's going to cost? And you go through and you look at all these different translations. They never say they don't have the money. They ask a whole bunch of different ways. Is this how you want us to spend our money? And so then Jesus said, and this is the part with Homes of Living Hope, is that he said, well, what do you have? And that's what we do with Homes of Living Hope, is that we take people that come to us and they say, they have a heart. They have a heart to do something for somebody. They maybe can't define it. They don't know who it's for. But they come to us and they have this desire to do something for somebody else. And so that's what we ask them, well, what do you have? And that's where we start. And, you know, people talk a lot about, what we do with these containers. You know, truthfully, what we do is we just keep people in play. We ask them to go out into their community, out into their resources, and to try to figure this out on their own. Now, we work with a lot of non-traditional, I would say for the faith-based type projects, with a lot of non-traditional sponsors. We work with a lot of public schools. We work with businesses where maybe the leadership of the business or somebody in there wants to bring faith-based work in there, and so we'll do them as team building projects. For businesses, we do them with a lot of civic groups, people that will come together for a whole lot of different reasons to serve, and then public schools. But again, part of that thing is that we're trying to bring people together to connect them. We're trying to I say unleash these resources. My personal mission statement is unleashing God's giftedness in others. And so what we try to do is really try to get them to figure out what do they have to bring to the table. So as part of that connecting, I like to tell the story a little bit with Bill Lawrence here. Bill is also a halftime guy. And a couple of years ago, he was in his journey. He was a successful heavy highway contractor, a very talented project manager, and he was looking for how to apply his skills. And in the process, he found us online. He found Homes of Living Hope online. And so he went to Jeff Spatafora, who was his coach, and said, hey, I found this really cool thing, and Jeff says, I know Bart really well, let me introduce you. And so Bill and I sat down and talked, and basically in so many words, I said, what do you have? And so Bill had this desire to put this together, and now he's leading the largest project that we've done, which is we're taking containers, 4 different containers that are being built in 4 different cities, and then they're going to be assembled on the Navajo Indian Reservation for a Christian radio station. So it's a very unique kind of project. And again, a lot of different sponsor groups that are working with that. And then through Bill's connection, he's also worked, and we've connected with Edify, and we've sat down and talked about what they're doing and how we can help them. And so now we're doing 3 projects with them. And again, it all kind of starts with the question of what do you have? And so, finally, I guess I would say is that, what we bring is probably best practices. I tell our project managers to bring energy to the project and keep the momentum going. That's a lot of what we do. And so if in your community, if in your workplace or your civic groups that you belong to, if it's the kind of thing that you want to bring people together and create a space for them to bump into Jesus, these are great projects. So that's what I've got. And I want to also make another point, because I'm the only contractor up here talking, I think I'm also the only one that finished on time.